Hold your head as high as you can, high enough to see who you are, little man. Life sometimes is cold and cruel, maybe no one else will tell you, so remember that you are black gold, black gold. You are black gold.
Hello and welcome to Artistic Expressions with me, your host, Michelle Thomas. Today's episode is a little different. We at Artistic Expressions definitely support the arts and get the word out on different artists and functions that are going on in the city. But we also are very conscientious at Artistic Expressions, and we really feel it in our hearts to kind of get some information out that we really think is important to the public. So today we have a panel of guests, and they are from the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, CHRO. I want to make sure I get that right. And today's guests, we have Pika, we have Kim, and we have Cheryl. And so today will just be a conversation about what CHRO is all about and kind of find out some more information. So we will get started. And I'll jump in with the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about CHRO, and who would like to start that?
Sure, I will start. I'm Cheryl Sharp. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. Thank you for having us. Arts, of course, is very important to us, and thank you for your social consciousness and for allowing us to come on to your show and talk to your audience. The CHRO is the oldest state-sponsored civil rights agency in the nation. And we think that that's important to know, especially in this climate that we're living in currently. Our mission is to eliminate discrimination in housing, employment, credit transactions, and in places of public accommodation. That's a lofty mission, and it's one that we take very seriously, and it's very important to the communities that we serve, the people that we help. That they know what their rights are, and they know when to come to our agency for assistance. We also do affirmative action in contract compliance. We're responsible for both of those. Affirmative action, as it relates to state agencies, they have to file affirmative action plans with us, and so we monitor their hiring and their promotions. As it relates to contract compliance on state-funded projects, we ensure that there's compliance with the contract compliance laws, which means that we ensure that there are good faith efforts being made to provide equal opportunity to all businesses, small businesses in Connecticut, ethnic minority-owned businesses in Connecticut, women-owned businesses, and disabled-owned businesses. And we have various departments and regional offices across the state. So we have a legal department, affirmative action contract compliance department, and then we have 4 regional offices. We think that the work that the Commission does is very important, and the responsibility we have is vast. We are here to protect the public against discrimination. And so in 2016, sometimes we hear, well, why do we need a Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities still? Because Connecticut is a really progressive state. But unfortunately, every year we process about 4,400 or 4,600 complaints, meaning that we take in a few thousand complaints, and then we actually, fully process, close through settlement negotiations or a full hearing or, some resolution of the case, and it is about 4,500 cases a year. In addition to that, we monitor thousands of contracts as well. So we're a really busy agency.
Right, behind the scenes. It sounds very large,
yes.
What you're talking.
And we also provide training to businesses through our Business Training Institute. In addition to that, we go into schools and provide training to the teachers and to the students. We try to bring the communities together to talk about issues that are related to discrimination and ending discrimination in the state of Connecticut. We'd love to be the first state in our nation to eliminate discrimination. How cool would that be?
Yes, please. Yes, let's do that. So who wants to attack and tackle the big question of what is discrimination?
Sure, I'll take that. And my name is Kim Jacobson, and I am a human rights attorney at the CHRO. So we all discriminate on a daily basis. I have 2 boys, and I'm sure they would tell you I treat them vastly different. But what the CHRO is dealing with is illegal discrimination. So that is treating people differently based on a protected class basis. So what is that? That's kind of lawyers love these legal terms, but it's your race, it's your gender, it's your religion, it's your disability, your national origin, where you came from, those kind of things. And there's many class bases, as I know we're going to be talking about those later on in the program, that they're all listed in the statute. But it's the things that people think about, your race, your color, your gender. So it's treating people differently, but doing it in a way that affects them legally, that there's some adverse action that happens to them. So if someone loses their job based on discrimination, someone can't get housing based on discrimination, someone is treated differently in a movie theater based on discrimination. Those are all the kind of illegal discrimination that our agency looks into.
Okay. And so for the public, let's say I am at the movie theater and I have experienced some form of discrimination. So then what are my rights? What are my options? How would I contact your office? What's the next step?
I would love to answer that question for you. As Cheryl stated, we have 4 field offices, and we have a housing office. For the purposes of this discussion, most individuals will call into the office. And the 4 field offices, one is located in Norwich. The Hartford office, of course, is located in Hartford.
Sure.
We have a Waterbury office, and we have the Bridgeport office. The Bridgeport office covers the southwest region of the state. The Waterbury office covers the west central section of the state. The Hartford office covers the capital area. And the eastern Norwich office covers the eastern region and Enfield. That's the region east of the river. So most people will call us. And I don't know if we are scrolling our number yet. But that number is 860-566-7710, extension 3. Well, actually, the call it's prompted,
Sure.
and within 48 hours, that person will get a call back. So, for purposes of this discussion, we will use that number for individuals to call us, and we can always redirect the number to the appropriate field office, whether it's the housing office, the Bridgeport office, the Eastern Region Norwich office, or the West Central office. I think that's how, but there are other ways of contacting us, if I may add. We have a website, which is ct.gov/CHRO. Sometimes we get letters from individuals or email to various departments, and they're always properly rerouted and they're contacted to follow up.
Now, is there an active kind of campaign or way in which you kind of get the number out, or get, how is the common person to know, like, I'm going to call CHRO?
Sure, would you like to take that?
Sure, that's a great question. We are trying to do a better job of that. It's important that people know that when they feel that they are the victim of illegal discrimination, that they don't feel helpless or hopeless. So we have a website. Pika said what that website is. We also have a Facebook page,
Okay.
CT CHRO. We have a blog, at CT CHRO WordPress. So we're trying to get into this century in terms of the technology. Yes, you have to use the social media. It's really important.
We have Twitter too.
We also have a Twitter account. I forgot about that. 21 words, right? Or 14 words. So we're trying.
This will be on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you
Very
go.
nice.
So we try to get the word out there. We also provide training, like I said, on our website we have the Business Training Institute, we have the Speakers Bureau. There are many ways in which to get in touch with us. But it's not always based on internet access. It's okay if you don't necessarily have internet access, because we try to go to various communities. We hold informational sessions, and so we go to libraries and we have informational sessions there. We had one in, what library was that for this region?
That's coming up in Bloomfield,
Yes.
and in West Hartford as well.
Okay. Have you done it? You haven't done anything yet with Hartford Public Library?
We did, not this year, we haven't done anything, but in previous years we've done things with Hartford Public Library. We're trying to get the word out. We don't have a budget for publicity or
So it's you guys.
to market ourselves, but we're trying to rebrand without having a department that's responsible for that.
Sure.
And so in a sense, the way that we do it now is to do shows like this.
Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah,
which is
great.
yes.
Right? We're using the media to help us out.
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll go back to discrimination. We talked about the different types. So I guess we can elaborate more on the different types of discrimination.
Want to do employment discrimination, Cheryl?
Oh, okay. I can talk about employment discrimination. I thought you were going to talk about employment discrimination.
that
Well,
would
we
be-
switched around.
I'll talk about it. So at the commission, individuals who believe that in their employment they're being treated differently because they belong to a protected class, they can then contact our office and file a complaint with us. A protected class, there are 26 in the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
And actually, if people can see the backdrop behind us, we have listed all of the protected classes there. And there are a number of them. So when you go to work and you are performing your duties and you believe that you're complying with all of the policies within your workplace and you have excellent performance, and then a promotion comes up, and you're like, wow, I'm the most qualified person for this promotion. I think I'm going to go for it, right? Because we all think that we're just wonderful and fabulous and like this is a good thing. Let's try to go for this promotion. And then you go for the promotion, and then someone who you trained for 10 years gets the position, and they're not the same as you. They're different from you.
Right.
They are in a different protected class. They may be a man and you're a woman, and you say, well, why did this happen? Why didn't I get that promotion? I was the most qualified. It called for a college education. I have one. He doesn't have one.
Right.
Why did this happen? And then you remember hearing the supervisor who was going to do the promotion say, I will never have a woman in this position. Because you're now thinking back and saying to yourself, why was I denied this opportunity? It's in those instances when you can link an adverse action, a bad thing that happened to you, you didn't get the promotion, to your protected class status, that there potentially could be some discriminatory intent there in denying you the opportunity. So in those instances, you should contact our office. We have individual staff persons who can assist you with intake. And intake is just them helping you to file a complaint with our agency. So in employment, you have hiring, you have promotion, you have demotion, so you have the disciplinary side of it, and you have the knock, 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 I want to get in the door and I want to have a job and I'm trying to get off the unemployment rolls. And so we take all types of employment complaints. In addition to that, we have individuals with disabilities who file complaints with us. One of the most egregious cases in my 20-plus career that I started when I was 5, so now I'm 25.
Exactly.
In my career, one of the most egregious cases was this gentleman who was a paraplegic. And he was an excellent, excellent performer. But he needed an accommodation, right? He worked at a table similar to the one we're sitting at. Every day when he went to work, he had to take his wheelchair apart because he couldn't fit his wheelchair under the table. Do you know that company only needs to take 4 bricks and put 1 brick under each leg of the table? It would have lifted the table. That would have cost $8, right? So they would not get the 4 bricks. They would not accommodate him in any way. He also did not have a handicap accessible bathroom to go to. So for his lunch hour, guess what he did? He had to put his wheelchair back together, go downstairs, leave the premises, go back to his home to use the bathroom, and for a year he spent using the bathroom at his home because his workplace would not accommodate him. And so that was early on in my career that was one of the cases that I was given to prosecute, which then lit even more of a fire in me to try to really work to eliminate discrimination, because I could see the pain on this gentleman's face. Sure. He was like, I am working so hard to prove myself, to show that my disability doesn't mean that I'm not a wonderful employee and a great worker. And so it would have cost him maybe $1,000 to accommodate him, to move the bathroom over, the stall door over 1 foot, and it would have cost $8, so $1,008 to get 4 bricks. Sure. And move the door over. We got a judgment in that case from the Superior Court because they appealed.
It went high, yeah.
Yes, they appealed the decision. We won at public hearing, and then they appealed it for $129,000. So $129,000, and all they had to do was spend $1,008. So discrimination is costly. That's another message, and for all the employers out there who may be tuning in. That it's really cheaper to accommodate someone, to treat someone fairly, to treat them equitably. It really doesn't cost much, but it can cost us a substantial amount of money to discriminate against an individual. And it's not only the dollars and cents of it, but it is the harm and damage that you're causing to that individual. And that's what we want to stop.
Yeah.
So.
We also deal with housing discrimination, and that's an issue I'm really passionate about, because what is more important than having a place where you feel like you can be yourself, where you're safe, where you're warm? I can't think of anything that's really one of our basic human needs. And we get a lot of cases all around the state, housing discrimination cases. I'll tell you some of the common ones, and it's interesting because in the area of housing, it seems like people are more straightforward in their discrimination, a little more bold, not as sophisticated as in the employment context. We'll still see a lot of ads that say no kids. That is illegal. You cannot keep kids out of the rental market. You can't confine the kids to the first floor. I know a lot of landlords think, oh, kids are noisy, we don't want to have them on the second floor. No, that's illegal. Something that's illegal in Connecticut specifically is lawful source of income, and what that really means is landlords cannot say no Section 8, but still yet I'd probably open up Craigslist today and see an advertisement that says no Section 8. And that's really important because people with subsidies need to be able to find good, safe housing. It's a requirement in Connecticut. We get a lot of service dog cases where landlords won't let someone have a service dog. We get a fair number of ramp cases where people need ramps to have access to their apartment. Landlords have denied that. That's just sort of a sprinkling of the sense of what we get. But we have a housing unit. It's right in Hartford. It handles the whole state. And they're very proactive in helping people file complaints, investigating, and taking people through the process. And people can call the central office if they have a housing complaint, or if they call Pika's office in Hartford, she'll redirect them.
Now, is there, for the public, where would one go to find, like, let's say I want to self-educate and I want to know what the laws are to say, because you're mentioning things that are just so common in conversation, like, no Section 8, I've seen that. And if that's illegal, like, I want to know.
Sure. So our website has a lot of information on these various issues, and especially in the housing, we have probably extra information, I think, there on the housing laws. So if anyone's interested, just go to our website. There's a lot of information right there about what is illegal and how to file a complaint with us.
Okay, that's wonderful. I mean, just you saying, I'm just thinking of conversations where people specifically have said, yeah, we don't want Section 8, or the kids, no kids is, I think that's a little overt to say, no kids, but this is, our society, what we're dealing with.
And we do get a lot of overt cases. You would think that everything is covert, but it's not. I had a complaint 1.5 years ago where we got a verified answer from the person who was being sued that said, I admit that I called the person the N-word. I admit that I called the person the head N-word in charge. I admit to clear violations of the law. With no conscience whatsoever. It was like that's an okay thing to do, and his justification was that, well, they use it in rap music, so I thought that that was okay, and I thought that they like to be called that, so what is the big deal? Like, why is that a problem? It's a problem because it's against the law. Mm-hmm. And it was creating harm for the individual who was just trying to support his family, who felt forced to go into work every day so he could take care of his family, and then had to be subjected to that type of treatment. So the overt discrimination has not stopped at all. And that should be reported to our agency, definitely. Pika's office is in the greater Hartford area, and those are the complaints that, she's the regional manager for our capital region, and so those are the complaints that her office actually handles from around this greater Hartford area.
Pika, you want to talk about public accommodation?
I would love to.
Sure.
The public might be wondering, what does public accommodation mean? We access places of public accommodations every day. We go to the grocery store, to the bank, to universities, colleges and universities, to school, public schools. I'm sure Cheryl will get into that more in terms of bullying when she talks about that. I stated the bank, to stores, department stores. And on occasion, we don't get as many complaints of public accommodations as we do in employment, but we do get those complaints, and some are more egregious than others. I recall one that was more emotional, and it was in a town. This lady went into the supermarket with her teenage son, and she was asked by the security to empty her pocketbook, and this is a grocery store. Most people don't go into a grocery store and steal things. At least that's not what I'm aware of, or those are the kinds of cases that I see. So her son is there with her, and she came to the Commission on Human Rights, and she filed a complaint. And I sat with her along with an investigator, and she was quite stoic about filing the complaint. And I asked her, and your son was there. You are his hero. And he saw that, and the tears began to roll. It was very painful for her. So she filed the complaint, and but her son also filed a complaint.
Okay.
And they both went through the process together, which was great education for him.
Absolutely.
So the public accommodations cases are filed in the same manner one would file an employment complaint.
So just give an overall, like you say, public accommodations. Just give me, like a list of like what types of things would people encounter in that? What are they?
Well, you could easily have gone into a drugstore, for instance, and the buzzer goes off. And if let's say you're with your friend who, if you're black, the friend is white, and the buzzer goes off at the same time when you both and left the store, and they decided the security would ask the black person to empty his pocket and not the white friend. And there's nothing found, really, but only one person, and it was the black person who was asked.
Sure.
So that person filed, and we were able to negotiate a settlement in the case for that person. So the police is a big place of public access, and Cheryl will get into that more in terms of racial profiling. It's not a place you go to look for service, but it is brought to you whether or not you like it. So I'm sure Cheryl will be addressing that as well.
Yeah, so when you think of a place of public accommodation, you're talking about a store, a restaurant, a hospital, the services that you receive from the police, and they have to be given in a fair manner. So if you are driving your car, you don't want to be pulled over just because you are a Muslim, or just because you're Hispanic, or just because you're black, and the police officer has no right to do that. They are supposed to, protect us offer public safety to us, but they're not supposed to racially profile us. I know that there's been a controversial thing I've been seeing on Facebook about a Trump sticker that was inside of a cruiser in one of the police cars in Hartford. And that's been very controversial, and there's been a lot of talk back and forth about whether or not that was appropriate because it's on city property, and that could be a problem just because Trump has espoused a rhetoric that seems to, maybe divide. And so the controversy centers around whether or not that has some type of discriminatory intent if what he has said presents some discriminatory intent. So you may have an individual who says, I was offended by that, and not only was the sticker there, but then these additional things happened. I was pulled over, I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I believe I was profiled. And then on top of it, when I look in the cruiser, then I see the sticker that then says to me that this person is a potential profiler. And so I think that companies, municipalities, they need to think about the messages that they're sending, because all of those things can be potential evidence. And when it comes to racial profiling, that's a very sensitive topic, because again, the recent incidents that have happened all across this country, which have resulted in the loss of life, people need to be especially sensitive to the messages that they're giving to the public.
And we don't want to limit people to think that places of public accommodation are limited to places themselves. It's anyone that's providing you a service. So you could have a sale that you're doing on the telephone with a company, but that could still be a place of public accommodation. So it's not just going into a store, but anyone that you're interacting with in somewhat of a public way. Yeah, sure.
That's a
Because
great clarification.
the definition is, a place that's offering goods and services to the public. And so that can be over the phone, that can be in person. It needs to be done in a fair and equitable manner. Again, our mission is to eliminate discrimination. So the dialogue around that particular issue of how do we get to a place in the state of Connecticut where we're eliminating discrimination, we have to stamp it out everywhere. We have to stamp it out over the phone, we have to stamp it out in person, we have to stamp it out in housing matters, employment matters, and in places of public accommodation, because that is the only way that a clear message is sent to the rest of the nation that in Connecticut there's fairness and equality for all.
Right. And we have to really work harder to get that message out.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Right, because as I'm hearing it, I'm like, okay, but people need to know, almost like in emergency, I know to call 911. I need to know right away, who do I go to for any discrimination? Because we do see it in our communities, and we know people firsthand who have dealt with it, and we need to be able to get that out. So that's awesome.
And even some of us have experienced, discrimination ourselves as we go about our daily, work. I know one of the first cases that I actually had in the Superior Court. The judge, when we walked in, there were 4 attorneys. I was one of them. The other 3 attorneys were Caucasian, and we walk into the room, and the judge says, "Hi, attorney so-and-so," to the principal attorney in our office, and "Hi, attorney," to the complainant's attorney and to the respondent's attorney, and looked at me and said, "Are you here to carry his bags?" And that's what he said to me. And so then that's when you have to take a deep breath.
Exactly, right?
You take a really deep breath, and you say, yes, woosah. It's going to be okay. And then you fashion a response. And my response was, no, in fact, I'm not here to carry his bags. That is my name, Cheryl A. Sharp, on the brief. And that is my brief that I submitted. And so then I shifted the focus from me onto him and onto what he said, because I said to myself, I'm not bearing the burden of this discriminatory statement that has come out. And so then it was kind of, I felt a little relieved to be sitting at the table feeling comfortable while everyone else now felt uncomfortable. And I said, because I'm not going to allow myself to feel uncomfortable, because I did not do anything wrong. What I did was to show up, to do my job. And what I did was to submit a brief and to win below, and now we're in court and it's being challenged, and that's fine. But no, I'm not here to carry anyone's bags. And so we know that people are going through these struggles and these battles every day. And we want people to know, if you believe you're the victim of illegal discrimination, then please contact our offices so that we can give you the best customer service.
Right.
And so that we can
Absolutely.
address your needs. And you said people know 911, so we're here to make it
Right.
a part of your consciousness. 860-566-7710, and that is the number for our capital region. Because if you are experiencing any discriminatory conduct, like I said, we want to stamp it out. We don't rule with a hammer, though. We would prefer the advocacy and education side of what we do. So if you need training, call us, because we provide it free to businesses, to nonprofits, to schools. We go wherever we need to go in the state of Connecticut to prevent harm to people.
Sure.
Because once a complaint has been filed with us, it's almost too late because someone has been hurt.
Right.
And we don't want the person to experience the hurt that comes with being discriminated against. So contact us. We're
I
there.
have two things in my mind immediately, but I want to talk about kind of breastfeeding.
Sure.
That's an interest of mine. But I just want to make sure don't let me forget. See, I just left my
Sure.
mind.
Well, we'll talk about
Talk about
breastfeeding.
that,
That's sort of one of
As
my,
she's talking, I'm like, oh.
it's one of my favorite issues, actually, and it's something that people are very unaware of. So in Connecticut, no one has the right to restrict your breastfeeding. So we've gotten cases in restaurants, we've gotten cases in malls of women being told to cover up, women being told that they need to go to the bathroom, and our state law protects people. That's a public accommodation part of the law. And allows them to breastfeed in public. And they don't have to cover up. Just go ahead and feed your child. Some people might feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable because I'm breastfeeding my child, then look the other way because it's perfectly legal. So that's a big message we've been trying to get at. I don't think people are aware of that law. The other context breastfeeding comes into play is women want to be able to express their breast milk at work. And the Obamacare, they call it, made that a federal law, allowing women to have time and access to a clean place, not the bathroom, to express their breast milk. If people are having complaints specifically about that, I would tell them to call the Department of Labor, with the exception if they have something adverse happen to them, like they're harassed, they're terminated, they're demoted, and they believe it relates to their breastfeeding, I would love for them to contact our offices. We're very interested in those cases. I think it's one of the next generation civil rights issues. It's not something that people is on their radar when they talk about civil rights. Breastfeeding doesn't necessarily come into mind. But we're trying to get the word out that yes, breastfeeding and your right to breastfeed is a civil rights issue.
Yeah. It makes me think. I was in the military for some years, and the military is very progressive in that area and accommodating, where all of the things that you're talking about, they made sure that those accommodations were readily available for women. And I was nursing twins, and so
wow.
And in the military at the same time.
and so
yeah.
it was very much a safe haven, if you will, in that regard. And
Excellent.
you don't really think that. You may, some people may not think that, and this was, years ago, before it was like you're saying now. It's like, kind of this active thing where people, and it still isn't in the minds of people thinking that it's a civil rights issue, but it is. And this country is different than other places, and so that's not readily accepted in the social. But I think that it is more and more. I see that when I'm out and about more, and I think that's great. So you sound passionate about it. Like, we're gonna breastfeed our children. So that's great. Any other really powerful stories or any other issues that CHRO kind of passionate about?
I think the school bullying cases, the reason why they're so touching, you're talking about children
Yes.
who are being treated differently because they belong to a protected class. And it really hurts them when they're treated differently and they go to the school administration and nothing's done. It goes unaddressed. So we had a case, Cheshire Board of Education, that went to the Supreme Court. Okay. And that case was good for us because what the Supreme Court ultimately found, this case involved a couple of teenagers, students who got involved in an altercation, and the black student was treated more harshly than the white student. He was suspended, and the white student wasn't. He had been actually called racial slurs by the white student who wasn't suspended after they got involved in a fight. Okay. The family went, and this case is years and years old, so I think that the school system there has definitely improved since this case. Yes, learned a lesson from the Supreme Court decision. But the importance of that decision was that the Supreme Court found that the Commission's jurisdiction, our authority to hear the case, ran concurrently with the State Department of Education. So individuals who believe that they're treated differently in schools can definitely file a complaint with us. Prior to that, there was an argument on the other side that the Commission didn't have jurisdiction over these cases. Of course, we always knew we had jurisdiction over these cases, but the opposition felt that we didn't. It just is really harmful when children are treated differently because they belong to a protected class and then nothing happens. So this student, his allegation was, I'm being bullied, I'm being called racial slurs at school, and I need you to do something about it. And he didn't feel that the school's response was adequate because the behavior of the student who was hurling the racial slurs didn't stop. And that's how situations escalate. In this case, it did escalate into a fight, and that wasn't good. We also do, we also have a case now that's pending at public hearing that's gotten a lot of press, and it's a case where some 11 and 12-year-olds from Harvard were sent to what was supposed to be a science field trip, and during the science field trip, they actually reenacted slavery. They were forced to participate.
As soon as you say it, I'm like,
I shouldn't say forced, but they were told to participate, and they could opt out if they wanted to.
But really, what 11 or 12-year-old is going to know to opt out?
Exactly.
you're in the group, you're doing the thing.
Yes, and so then they reenacted slavery, and they had the children running through fields, and told them that imagine your Achilles, heel is cut, and that you'll never see your mother and father again, and someone thought that was appropriate to send any child through that, but especially a child whose ancestors potentially did go through that at such a young age, and the permission slip didn't contain the information about what was actually going to happen once you got there. So we take those types of cases, and we protect those children from those types of incidents. So to me, those are some of the most riveting cases when you look at public accommodation and the racial profiling cases where people get tasered or killed. And the allegation from the family is that it's because they belong to a protected class, there's been a lot of rhetoric and discussion about the police and the role that they play in our communities, and it's an important role that the police play because they're there to protect us. But that protection, it takes a wrong turn sometimes, not often, but one time is too many because it could result in someone's death, untimely death. And so the commission is there to police and make sure that the stops that occur, the detentions that occur are not related to someone's protected class status. And individuals who believe that they were illegally stopped or detained can file a complaint with us. Or sometimes we get police brutality complaints, because the person is like, okay, yeah, I ran the light, but did I have to get bashed in the head 15 times after I ran the light?
Why did get along?
Right, okay, so I did something wrong. You got me, but then I don't want to be beaten down because of it, because there's a law in place, and can we go to court, and can we handle it there in the way that we're supposed to? Right. And then on the flip side, police officers are saying, we have to make split-second decisions because we want to go home to our families as well. And so it's difficult. That's a very sensitive and difficult issue to deal with. But I say I'm happy the commission is there because, and I'm happy to be a part of the commission because we can look at the facts and look at what happened and make an independent determination as to whether, yes, because our investigators are neutral. Yeah. Some people say, the CHRO is just a liberal organization and they're pro-complaining. Right. That's not true. At the investigative stage, we are neutral. We are not taking sides. We are looking at evidence and determining whether we can believe what the complainant is saying because there's evidence to support what they're saying, or whether we can believe the defense of the respondent because there's evidence to support that defense. And we're drawing inferences as an agency, and we're making credibility determinations as investigators that we have. That's what they're doing. They're assessing the evidence that comes before them and evidence that they gather on their own based on what's presented to them. So, and there are many prongs, to our process. So we're neutral at the investigative stage. Then when we prosecute complaints, like once one of our investigators says...
once you know what the side is, now we're going at it.
Yes.
Going for the jugular.
Now the prosecution begins. And so then there is a shift, but we don't want people to be confused about the various prongs of our process. But the investigative stage, neutral. Once we find reasonable cause to believe discrimination occurred, then that means one of our staff persons who's highly trained believes that there was some discrimination, and then we assign an attorney who represents the state of Connecticut. And the state of Connecticut's interest in eliminating discrimination is similar to a complainant who doesn't want to be discriminated against.
Sure.
And so therefore we then go to prosecute that case because, once again, going back to our mission, what is it? Eliminate discrimination, right? So that's just to give you a quick overview.
Remember what I wanted to kind of touch on.
See, if I talk long enough, it comes
It
back.
just comes back. It just comes
Yes.
back. So in this process, what protects the complainant, right, against kind of discrimination, for discrimination? Like,
So-
here I am, I'm going to make a complaint. and I
Sure,
want
retaliation. You're
right?
talking about retaliation.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that's
I want
something that a
protection.
lot of people are concerned about. At my workplace, something bad happened, now I'm going to file a complaint, and am
Right.
I going to get fired? So there's a few things that we tell people. Retaliation in itself is illegal. So if you file a complaint, say that you didn't get a promotion, you believe it's because you're a woman, and then you get fired.
Right.
That would be adding to the discrimination, and that in itself is illegal. And as a matter of fact, we might investigate the case about the promotion and find, no, that had nothing to do with you're a woman. But hey, wait a minute, they fired you because you filed the complaint, and they're still going to be liable even though they didn't do anything illegal in the first place. So that's a law that's out there to protect them. Now, these are civil laws. They're not criminal laws. No one's going to go to jail if that happens. But it is usually enough to scare an employer from kind of taking the second
Sure.
step. But I would say a lot of our retaliation complaints are pretty strong, sometimes stronger than the underlying complaints themselves. Because, people are, even though there's these laws to protect people, they're human. And
Right.
so I tell on you, and then you're mad.
Right.
And you react. I mean, it's just
Right.
like the playground, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
But in the adult world, we have these laws that are supposed to be out there to protect ourselves. And again, getting the word out that retaliation is illegal. It's also a protection for people who testify at
Right.
our hearings. So if someone is afraid to come forward to support their coworker, they also are protected by the anti-retaliation statutes. As a matter of fact, you can be protected if you just complain internally
Yeah.
about discrimination. Never even file a complaint with us, but just complain to HR, and then something bad happens too.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's
That's
lots
common.
there's lots of protections out there for people, and
That's important to
Sure.
mention because people might be afraid to come forward
Mhm.
because there's something can happen, some backlash or what have you. So people need to know that they're protected on that end as well.
Sure.
Well, we can't stop the employer from taking a negative action against them for testifying or for participating in an investigation. The protection is not immediate, but the law does protect them in terms of the eventual filing of a complaint of retaliation. So they may lose their job. So that is something that people have to weigh on a personal level on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll move now towards to get information out about timetables and when the process starts. What kind of timetables are we talking about on both sides of the complaint?
Well, so you've called in to the Commission on Human Rights, and we schedule an appointment for you. And the appointments, you should be able to get an appointment within 3 weeks. I'm sure Cheryl, as the Deputy Director, would like it to be instant. but resource,
This is true.
because of limited resources, we try to get people in as soon as we can. If there's an appointment open up, we will call and get that person in.
Okay.
And if there are immediate and extenuating circumstances, we can get that person in, and particularly if they're still employed. The person comes in for the appointment and meets with an investigator, and the investigator assists that person in drafting the complaint, which is taken under oath.
Okay.
The complaint is filed.
Is that done at the office? Or
In the
is that
office,
Okay.
yes. The complaint is served within 15 days of the filing,
Okay.
and the employer or the entity against whom the complaint is filed is required to respond to the complaint within 30 days to 45
Okay.
days. So the answer comes in, and the complainant is not obligated to rebut it, but it's advisable that they do.
Okay.
And within 60 days of the receipt of that answer from the respondent, we call them, the person against whom the complaint is filed, an appointment is scheduled
Okay.
for mediation.
Mhm. And who's at the mediation?
An investigator is assigned that case, and mediation comprises the large bulk of our resolutions to
Yeah.
complaints. Yes, many of the complaints are resolved
At
through
that level.
mediation.
And let me just add, we have one of
Yes.
the best mediation rates in the country.
Okay.
Yeah, we have one of the highest, if not the highest mediation
Passionate.
rates in
She
the
jumps
country.
in
So I just wanted
Right.
to throw that in. Now, I don't mean
We're
to cut you off.
eliminating.
Yes, we're eliminating
That's
discrimination.
You know,
right.
we've had a lot of success because in 2011 we really overhauled our process. If you would have talked to
Right.
someone like 6 years ago, the biggest complaint would have been everything's going
Time,
too
right?
slow.
Time.
But I think by adding that early mediation in, we're really able to kind of get more cases through the door, get people to sit down, get the parties to understand where each other's coming from. I mean, we're not going to be able to resolve everyone's issue, but a lot of those cases can be resolved early. So I think having that early mediation has just been a huge success for our agency.
Wonderful.
And I do agree that mediation requires special skills, and I think commission staff is very good at that in resolving most of our cases early. Those cases that are not resolved, some individuals will take a release of jurisdiction and go into court, which Kim will probably talk about, and or otherwise the case may go to, if it's resolved, it's withdrawn. It no longer is in the commission.
Right, right.
Cases that are not resolved through mediation and are not released to going into court are subject to investigation.
Okay.
So within approximately 15 days of the failed mediation, the case will be scheduled for fact-finding. And at a fact-finding conference, the evidence is examined, witnesses are examined, and a decision is made to determine whether or not the evidence supports your claim for discrimination.
And that process may take
Yeah.
a little time. or
I'll have Cheryl address the issue of the time frame, because that varies from case to case, and
yeah, we
that's
have
something we're working.
Sure.
Yeah, some
in
cases
bringing
resolve in 30 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's the complaint
Make
comes in,
notice.
we serve the complaint, the respondent contacts us and says, we don't want to go through this process. We want a pre-answer before we give you an answer.
Mhm.
We just want to try to settle it.
Sure.
And so then the case just settles. We talk to both sides and we get the case settled.
Right.
Some cases take a year or 2 years. It depends on the complexity of the case. It depends on the willingness of the parties to come together to try to reach a resolution. And it also depends on what actually happened. and who's actually in the wrong. Because like with anything, there are two sides to a story. We rarely get a perfect complainant. And we rarely get a perfect respondent. So, and sometimes we do, but it's not the norm most of the time. Sometimes it's something in the complainant's history that then the respondent can point to. For the respondent in their defense of the actions that they took, a lot of times there's inconsistencies. Like they'll say, we have an attendance policy and it's applied the same across the board to everybody. Then we ask for them to provide us with records. And then we're like, well, this person was absent 2 times and they were never written up. And the complainant who filed this complaint has been suspended for 4 days with no pay, and they were absent 1 time. So what is the difference and what happened here? And then you start to see backpedaling. Oh, when we said that the attendance policy applied across the board, your understanding of what had happened was that across the board didn't mean the same thing when we said it as when you said it. And so you get into that type of dialogue, and investigators are trained to see through that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, sometimes you have to actually go to the work site and access personnel files. And then you discover, my goodness, this person has done far worse things, not necessarily in terms of the attendance itself, but other things, and they've been given chances over and over and over and over, and nothing happened to them. At least they didn't lose the job. They may have been written up, maybe.
But I'm pretty sure too that once you're going in and looking through files, and not, that hindsight's 20/20. Like, oh, I didn't think they would go this far.
Sure. Exactly.
All my records would be exposed.
And listen, we're dealing with human beings. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't want the audience to think that there's never an employer who comes away from this with having done nothing wrong, because I think we find a lot of times people think they were discriminated against and maybe they weren't treated well, but it doesn't rise to the level of illegal discrimination. And so, our investigators are trained to kind of be neutral, look at both sides of the story, go through the documents, listen to testimonies, and come up with, what is a fair decision. And just that investigation just gets the case to the next level. Once we find discrimination, like Cheryl talked about before, then we're going to prosecute, and that's my job. I take those cases to public hearing, and we represent the state. We work with complainants. We work with their attorneys to get them damages for the discrimination, their back pay, maybe some front pay, emotional distress in some cases. So, it's a different game once we go on to the litigation stage.
Right. So in terms of timeframes, it varies. It's on a case-by-case basis, but we've improved our process so much. In 2011, there was a law passed that improved our process greatly, because cases can now go through what's called early legal intervention, and our legal department gets involved sooner. That takes some of the pressure off of the regions, because I think Pika stated earlier, we have this much responsibility and we have this many resources, and so sometimes it gets hectic, but we have such a dedicated staff, such a passionate staff who really believes in fairness and equality and in the mission of the agency. And so you will find all across the commission people diligently working to get the cases resolved as quickly as possible. A few years ago, we used to have a huge backlog. It was close to 50 or 60% of the cases. At this moment, we have less than 5% of our cases are aged, and that is because our staff has really worked on processing the cases. And we don't look for quick closures, we look for quality closures that are done expeditiously. And I think that there's a difference. And that difference is we don't want to see cases coming back on reconsideration, because then it's delayed justice for either side. If it's ultimately going to be that there's no discrimination and then it gets dragged out and it takes a long time, that's not fair to the respondent. If ultimately we're going to get a finding of discrimination, it shouldn't be dragged out, and it should go through the process so that that person can have their opportunity to be heard and be awarded the damages that they're entitled to. So we've really worked to improve our process, and we're proud of it. Like, we can hold our heads up high now about the work of the agency. And we're seeing that we're even perceived differently in places like at the legislature.
we do have to end. It's like the time I tell you.
We're just starting.
You just start. We could just keep going. This is so much information. But the key things that I do want to point out, I do feel that passion within the organization, and it feels like this well-oiled machine, you know, whether it has been, you know, learning from past mistakes or rethinking, right? We're in this world where we really kind of have to rethink our movement and steps and how to do things different to kind of go along with the times, social media, work these things out.
Mm.
And you guys are bringing a really strong presentation that is what you're about, that, you know, you really are for eradicating and you know, ending discrimination, but in a way that's very humane and very progressive. So I thank you for that, you know, the information, and I thank you, Pika, for coming, Kim and Cheryl. I will definitely do my best to honor what this is all about and getting that information out with the numbers, the Facebook page, all of the social media aspects of it to move forward.
Well, we would like to thank the Hartford Public Access TV for hosting us.
Sure.
It is an honor to be here and to give us this opportunity to get the word out, and I'm sure Kim feels the same way and Cheryl feels the same way.
Yes,
Yes.
it's an
Of
honor
course.
and a privilege. And I was born and raised in Hartford, so it feels good to be back and to be able to represent the state agency that I am so passionate about.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Yes. Okay, so this has been Artistic Expressions. This episode was very informative, a very passionate group. CHRO is doing, obviously, the job, getting the job done, decreasing their numbers and making it happen. We're going to take our part in this and get the information out to you, and just keep supporting. I mean, Connecticut and Hartford is just great, so let's continue to work together to continue to make it great. Thank you so much for joining us, and always remember to support your local artists. Thank you.
Head up, don't give up.